Hi. If this video has appeared on your screen, then it has materialized right when it needed to. So, I'm Spencer. This is Real Television. And today's video is going to be about Hook and its lessons that Spirit wanted to kind of put out there to the world. So, with that being said, I just share downloads from Spirit, like I said, and I talk about movies and different media. If you're new here, that's what I do. I also talk about my books a little bit because I am slowly writing quite a few different novels. But yeah, with that being said, moving forward to, let's see what's next on the docket here. Sorry, I'm a little overwhelmed because this week has been a little bit crazy for me. First, I hurt my back stretching. Who does that? Apparently you get old and then you stretch and you go, my back. And that's literally what happened. I did get my tattoo today, or not today, but I got my tattoo on Saturday the 21st. That was really cool. It wasn't bad. I'll put a picture up here a little bit closer so you can see like what it looks like. But yeah, it's just kind of an inversion of the Ace of Swords card, both upright and reversed, to have a double meaning of like never forgetting yourself for other people and always seeking knowledge, that kind of thing. That's just kind of like the surface level meaning of it for my personal take, but I figured I would share. And the placement is very specific as well. But the leaf on top, I might need to get that retouched just because it's a little bit too light. So I might have to go with a little bit darker of a green. But it's an important piece to my story that I'm writing, my sci-fi / biopunk universe. So it just means that you're an informant in the book. So if that's interesting and it piqued your interest, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps, fuel that dream to write a book one day. So, and maybe several, clearly. But yeah. With that being said, that is my good news for the week, though, the tattoo. So I'm really happy with it. The only thing I was kind of upset about at first was that she covered the part at the base of the blade that has the very I think it's like an angular like section to it. But then again, that's kind of the point of the tattoo, is because to me that represents like the details of self-discovery, but only you know that, as the person who got the tattoo. I only know what it took to get here. So it makes sense that I know that the sword doesn't actually look completely straight, which other people will automatically think, oh, it wasn't that hard for you to get to this point. Yes, it was. Trust me. If you were me and you lived my life, you would be like, thank God. But anyway, with that being said, feel free to share your good news in the comments. I want to hear that. I desperately need to hear that today. I want to see if other people are doing good today. It's just been real stressful at work, so I'm trying to just make do with my current situation in that regard. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Hook. So I'm not going to get too much into the details of the spiritual side just yet, just because I really loved that movie as a kid, but for a different reason than I do now. And I'm sure it's the same for other people that are watching this video. Hook was a very nostalgic movie for me, although I didn't quite understand why people liked Peter Pan, but don't come for me. I know there's a lot of people, Peter Pan like stands in the audience probably that are going to watch this video because it's mentioned in the movie and whatnot. It has that association, obviously, but I didn't understand why people liked Peter Pan so much. I'm like, who cares? It's a kid in an island that gets to visit Earth every once in a while. That's it. And I'm like, how was that not interesting to me as a kid? But then again, I was interested in more like the darker stuff, like dragons and werewolves and different cryptids and stuff like that. So it didn't really go into my venue on the pie chart of stuff that I liked. So, but with that being said, it's such a good Robin Williams movie. I kind of cried a little bit just because I relate to his spirit of who he was. I'm sure a lot of other people do too, but I'm just saying, like, to be such a good person in a world that can feel so, I guess the right word would be oppressive. I don't know. It could be a different word for other people. It doesn't have to be that same word. But it just somebody who brought love and light. I know that's kind of like cliche in this area of YouTube, but he really did bring in that love and light, and supported those he cared about. And one story that comes to mind, I forget what the other actor's name was, but he did, I think it was Mousetrap. The guy that did the voice for Timon. If you remember, put it in the comments, because I can't remember his name for the life of me right now, and I'm not really willing to look it up. But I remember there was an interview that he did with him, that actor, and the interviewer kept trying to like poke and prod and ask if he was gay. And at the time, he was very uncomfortable because it was the 90s. Nobody really cared. And if they did find out you were gay, it could have been a career ender for him, probably. So Robin Williams came up and, interjected and said something. I'm sure there's a video out there that you could see, but I'll try to find it and link it into the comments here, just because he was such a good dude. For real. Also, if you hear any sound, it's my tower fan, like my computer fan. It drives me nuts. Hang on. You're okay. Relax. It's not going to shush. Anyway, computer problems. Am I right? But yeah, I just think that it's a great movie to kind of explore keeping that connection to your inner child and what makes you happy, and something that keeps you still full of wonder for life, if that makes sense. Some people it could be like that, but for me it was like that. It doesn't have to be, obviously. You have your own connection to film and pop culture, what you like and you don't like and all that. But for me, this movie took on a whole different connotation in the spiritual realm of things. So I wanted to kind of talk about them today, just because Spirit had basically nudged me to say, hey, you should watch this tonight. I'm like, okay. And I do apologize too that this video is quite late. I had the back issues earlier this week, and then I had work stress. So I apologize for not getting it out. If you are somebody who is watching my videos and finding it helpful, I'm glad. Definitely let me know if it's helped you, whether that's now at the time of recording or in the future. Hello, people in the future. With that being said, let's go ahead and go over the scenes that came to mind during the meditation session. And I'll go ahead and put some synchronicities that I saw or was drawn to include in this list right here. So feel free to pause if you need to. But with that being said, the first scene that I saw in my head was the scene where Peter was yelling at his family and his kids for being too loud in the business phone call. The message I got immediately was, I know you feel overwhelmed and stressed. You feel you've done every possible thing right, and yet you haven't found peace. You don't know how to move forward. Take a step back in time. Revisit things long forgotten. Reclaim your childlike wonder of the world, like I was saying just earlier. Completely forgot I even wrote that. Hey, relax. Shush. Hello? I'm going to have to pause this. Anyway, sorry for cutting there, but my computer decided to take off mid-flight down the runway, apparently. But with that being said, where was I? I was at take a step back in time. Revisit things long forgotten. Reclaim your childlike wonder of the world. The systems in place want you exhausted, frazzled, and scared. But your inner child knows the way. They may uncover trauma, but the only way to the peace is through. To true peace is through. It won't all be bad memories. There will be just as much good, more than what you currently remember. So that just goes to show that, like, in our lives, we grow up and then we forget what happened as a kid, both good and bad. I know that for me, there was quite a bit of stuff that I don't remember from childhood, other than things that were related to gender. There was nothing else. I didn't have the words for it, but for me, it was very important to understand and get used to the role that I was given at birth, and in order to fit the role. So in order to meet expectations put upon me. And sometimes that's kind of what we do when we're kids. We're given these set of rules and we have to follow them according to whoever's in charge, and that's our parents or our, excuse you, my water bottle, adjusting to the air density. Anyway, the leadership in our churches or friend groups, other people's parents, whatever. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of letting spirit guide the words. So I apologize if this makes zero sense. But that's kind of what we do when we grow up and we don't know what to do. So we're trying to follow the crowd, if that makes sense. But if we follow our hearts and our minds, generally that will lead you to the better path, the less trodden path, I will admit, but it's the one worth the effort. Despite any wounds that may come up that you find that you had, or looking at your life in a different perspective or multiple different perspectives, for yourself, that's quite important. But you have to take the time to kind of do that. And unfortunately, the world keeps us busy enough that we feel that we can't take time for ourselves. I know for the longest time, I didn't want to take time off of work because I felt guilty about it. And it's wrong to feel guilty to take time for yourself. That should not be the norm, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody's having a throat chakra issue, but that wasn't happening before this video. So just take into account that maybe you might have to speak your mind about something. You might upset some people, but in order to help your inner child feel safe with you and seen, that might be what needs to happen. And that's the same thing that goes for me. Maybe that's something I need to do. Considering, you know, my family is very, like, right-leaning, for lack of a better term. They're very caring, but, like, you know who they voted for if you know them. Which is not a bad thing, but it is. I'm not going to say any more about that. I'm not going to get too much into the political stuff, just because there's not much to say at this point. It's all clear. It's very clear. But anyway, the next scene that I got was Nana, the dog, at the beginning, burying his work phone in the dirt, in the snow. The message says, take the time necessary to connect with yourself on a deeper level. Just like I was saying before, trying to take the time off to try to, like, if you need to take time off, take time off. If you have the PTO or like the hours to do so, it's very much needed. And whether you take time to journal or Look at old pictures, maybe. I know I have some old pictures of me before I transitioned, and I'm like, no. Like, I know what I looked like before. Let's not. But with that being said, that was just an example. Of course, you don't have to have something like that specifically. And this goes for everybody watching, no matter where you come from, what you believe, nothing. You could believe that this is all woo-woo stuff. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you take it purely by these, what's the word I was looking for? Like the psychological aspect of it, or like the logical human behavior side of things. Yeah, go ahead and, if that's your angle, go ahead. If that's what helps you, that is perfectly fine. Mine is a little bit of both. Anyway, clearly I have some sort of ADHD or something, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just funny because I go all over the place when I'm stressed. But with that being said, moving on to the next part, I think you get what I mean. Understanding things you forgot were... I don't know what I wrote there. That looks like complete chicken scratch. Only stepping... Oh, understanding things you forgot were only stepping stones and lessons. But what I'm not saying here is if there was any really bad trauma that happened to you. Unfortunately, yes, it did happen. If that is you, if that resonates, take what resonates and what doesn't, leave what doesn't. That's not to say that was meant to happen, or that you chose for that to happen, because I don't like that certain things people say that this life you chose certain things to happen to you. That's not... You chose the lessons. What I'm gathering from that, and when people say that, you're learning the lessons from certain things, but that doesn't mean that you signed up for trauma. You know what I mean? Like, there's still what is it called? Confirmation verb. Free will. So that unfortunately fucks up a lot of things. So that more than likely was the issue. Is that somebody chose to not do good, and it affected other people. But with that being said, understanding the things that you forgot, like what you went through or what you felt as a child or a teenager, is very important to how you move forward. Because based on things that you went through, there's lessons in those things that you take and learn how to integrate those into your being. You don't push them away. You don't bury them. You don't say you're perfect, because nobody is. You integrate the dark with the light and create that... I don't know if this is the right word, but symbiosis of the two. That might be important to somebody. Maybe somebody's a scientist and a behavior scientist. I don't know. Or a psychologist watching. I don't know. And if you are, hi. Love your work. Anyway, unless you're somebody who is an advocate for, what is that called? Conversion therapy. Ixnay on the upid state in that respect. Sorry, but but anyway, I'm a little unhinged today. I'm very sorry, but it's been a stressful week. But with that being said, moving forward, the next thing is take days off. Like I said earlier, I completely forgot about that. Take days off, hang with friends. Our lives are short. It's too short to be constantly on guard or worried about work. I know exactly why my life is like this right now then. But the next part, it says, it's a tough process. Of course it is. Spirit's got jokes. Moving earth away from what's been buried deep within yourself, your subconscious. Pay attention to your dreams. Find their meanings. Your spirit team likely communicates with you this way, through symbolism and people and places you know. Slow down and smell the roses. And what I looked at here that might be important, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, is the way I wrote the word dreams. It's like I said, my handwriting is chicken scratch, but it looked like chains when I wrote it down and looked back. So you could feel like you're stuck or in a stressful situation like I am with my job, you know. The important thing is to stop and look within to find the path forward, if that makes sense. Like I said, your inner child knows you best. If you just talk with them and meditate on the past, you'll learn so much that you'll be like, oh my God, that's why my life was like that. That's why this happened. And da, 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 da. That's kind of what I've been going through with this whole spiritual process myself. I've learned certain things about my life and why it's happened the way they did. Granted, I don't know every single aspect of it, obviously, but it's been kind of a need to know basis with my spirit team. So with that being said, it's all a perspective, in my opinion, with that. Roses is the more positive perspective, and then chains could be the negative perspective. So what you need to do is find the positive and the negative of any given situation that you're in, and then decide what to do moving forward from there. And that can go for the mundane aspect as well as the spiritual aspect. Again, with the throat chakra thing. Excuse me. Sorry, headphone users. But literally that saying that said, at the end here that said, slow down and smell the roses, or stop to smell the roses. Take the time to slow down. And that's very hard for me to do. And I've had to learn that lesson as well. 22:33 as I look at the clock, if that's important to somebody. Just my timer for recording. I felt that was important for somebody out there. But roses as well, something to take note of is the symbolism of a rose depends on the color of its petals. They all have thorns, but they are all beautiful. So there might be some painful things in the past, but after changing your perspective on it and healing from it, crying if you need to, raging at something if you need to, if that helps you heal, you end up looking back and finding something beautiful. Like for me, I had a lot of anxiety and anger and depression as a teenager. And I realize now that it was just a misguided way to show that I cared about someone in my life, that I reacted that way to them a lot, at least with the anger. But I don't want to go too much into that because it's not about me. This is about you guys learning how to heal and move forward and find your connection to your deepest self. Otherwise known as like, I guess you could call your higher self as well. I call it my higher self because my inner child knows the way to that. So that's what I like to call it. But that's just, I highly recommend all of my viewers that watch is to look up the symbolism of the things that I put as synchronicities, because that is very important in my YouTube channel series. That's how I see the blueprint of the world. I call it the blueprint, just because I can see how it all interconnects, especially when it comes to media. For some reason, that is a gift that I have. I don't know how to explain that, but it is most definitely a gift because it's like downloads. It's like I didn't know that shit before watching that movie. You know, like how would I know? Because this, I'm still new to the journey. I'm both the student and the teacher when it comes to this stuff. So, with that being said, I feel like that's what we all are at the end of the day. We're all students and teachers because we all know one thing and some other, and we don't know some other things. And there's other people that do know those things. So, both in the mundane aspect and the spiritual, obviously. Now, moving on to the next part is the scene where the crocodile clock eats Hook. The message that came with this is time is not real in spirit, but here in our world, you still have to remember that you can't keep putting off healing. If you don't, you're letting it consume you or push you away from the life you deserve to live, free from trauma, guilt, fear, and hatred. You know, as I say that, it just reminds me of the Yoda quote. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. Like, it's cool and all, but I forget what he says exactly, but it's that quote where he says, anger leads to hate, or fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. So if you're angry at something that happened in the past, for example, or fearful of something, it can lead you to be angry, and then, you know, all of that. It just kind of, it's a whole spiral, which is important. I would also look that up. Spirals in the spiritual sense of what those mean. So like if you're spiraling downward, that's just putting you at a lower vibration and into survival mode. Whereas if you are going upward, it's putting you at a higher vibration and therefore a higher mindset, where you see things differently. Your perspective literally changes because you're going from bottom survival level to bird eye. That's the best way I can explain that. But maybe somebody else can talk about that a little bit more in the comments or like in a different video if they want to reply to it or something. But that I felt was important to mention at this moment. The next part, it says, but if you don't run from it, your world becomes infinitely brighter than before. Pretty sure that was a helicopter. Maybe somebody is in the hospital. That was a wild guess, but I could be wrong. Maybe somebody's in the hospital watching this at the time that they watch. If you are, I hope you have a speedy recovery, and I hope it wasn't too serious. And if it was, I hope it's going well. Legitimately. Wow, that was really powerful. I don't know if that's true or not, but please let me know in the comments, because sometimes I get these things that I need to feel like I need to say, and I feel crazy. I'm like, what am I talking about? You know? But with that being said, if you don't run from your healing, the quicker you heal, the quicker you're going to get to a better life. Let me just say that, because the more you focus on the positive, and the more you follow your heart and your dreams, the more you're going to connect with yourself and therefore connect with some other higher power, whether that's you believe in God through Christianity, whether you believe in Cernanos, or if you believe in Hecate. Well, believe in is kind of a strong word, but you know what I mean? Like, your different faiths all essentially lead to the same place. It just is a matter of perspective. So that's all I'll say on that. I talk about that more in my book that I'm writing. So it's, if you're interested in that and that has piqued your interest, feel free to like and subscribe again if you want to. No pressure. It just helps, you know, get those out quicker. So but with that being said, the next thing that I wanted to mention is the Rafiki quote from Lion King, where he says, you can either run from it or learn from it. That's the best Swahili accent I can do. I don't know if that's actually Swahili. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But that's instantly what came to mind, because that is absolutely 100% true, because you can run from it and become angry and toxic. There's people in my life that I know, I can read them like a book, I swear. Like, there's been things that have happened to them that they have not healed from and have let themselves become toxic people. Okay? Do not let yourself become that because you decided not to heal yourself. I'm serious. I looked into the camera for that one. I laugh, but it's true. Okay? Now, the next thing I wanted to point out is this scene that popped into my head, kind of mixed with the movie Interstellar, which for me is a very important synchronicity for me. Just that movie in general is very important to me. I had a vision in my mind when I wrote this part down, and it said Interstellar. It was a picture of Interstellar. Like I was the main character from that movie, and I was picking a time thread out of the black hole that I was stuck in. And I pulled out the scene that said Peter remembering and growing. So you're basically looking back. This is what it says. You'll look back and be glad you healed. Your past self will look up to you, wondering how you did it. Because that's the scene where Rufio looked at Peter and was like awestruck. You know, he ended up taking over for Peter when he was gone. You know, that's when we grow up and we forget what we loved and what we did as a kid, what we enjoyed. Our happiness a lot of the time is left behind. So as soon as you connect with your happiness again, your inner child, you get to have all of these memories back and all of these beautiful lessons that you learn and integrate from. And the tarot card Temperance comes to mind if you're a tarot reader. Or the Magician even. That's important as well, because you have all the tools that you need in order to change your life. You really do, because all of the tools that you have are within. Via creativity or storytelling or whatever it is that helps you connect with yourself. That could be video games for somebody who knows. But with that being said, just take that and kind of mull it over. Look at the symbolism in that movie. I would recommend highly watching that movie. There's a lot of symbolism in it as well, I believe. The way that when I watched clips of it recently, I was like, wow, there's a lot of really deep shit in there. But yeah, moving forward, the last little bit here. The last scene is Jack saying he wants to go home and reaching for Peter towards the beginning of the movie, where they're caught in the net and Peter's trying to reach out to his kids, but he can't let go far enough of the mast before he falls, and he can't fly yet. Keyword. This part says, inner child reaches out to show your inner child. I forgot to put that word. Your inner child reaches out to show you the way, but you're afraid to make any moves, afraid of or unsure of how you could possibly heal. It may feel impossible, but when you put the effort in and have good intentions, things start to add up, and then you realize where time went and what you need to find your happiness again, to be able to reminisce without judgment, to remember without sorrow, to alchemize dark and light, like I was saying earlier. It's that yin and yang balance between the two forces within yourself. And the word alchemize is important here as well. I did put it at the beginning of the video of the synchronicities, all of them, but specifically pink light, or pink hearts. Don't know if that's significant to anybody, but it is for me, because pink hearts come up a lot for some reason. But pink light is usually associated with, if I remember correctly, it's usually associated with spirit and like your spirit team, enlightenment, stuff like that. I would look it up just to be sure. Don't take my word for it, because knowledge is important to seek. Just like Odin gave his eye for a little bit of knowledge, you should do that too, but not literally giving up an eye, but keep an eye out for new information is what I'm trying to say. That was very punny. I'm not sorry. If you know me in real life, I love puns. I love wordplay. I think it's hilarious. I have a very dry sense of humor, but I love it. And then specifically the part where she says, the wife says, and you're missing it. Because if you let yourself be stagnant and not heal from things, you are therefore missing the opportunities that are presented for you in this life to live, to actually live. That would be nice. And I am very close myself to actually living in a life that I created for myself. I'm not going to go too much into detail about it. Not that I would be afraid of losing it. It's not like a wish or anything, but it's one of my manifestations, and it's very close to my heart. Yeah, but definitely, with that being said, I feel like manifestations might be pretty important. Affirmations even might be really important for you. Especially if you're feeling down about yourself or depressed. I completely get it. I've been there. I have been there several times. So if you need a listening ear, our community is open for it. I'm going to be modding our comment section, at least as much as I can, unless we get really big, and I won't be able to do that anymore. So, which that is the goal. So we're going to eventually expand out into other things, but this is the main component of my channel that I wanted to kind of focus on. But specifically, like, the message of this movie, in my opinion, is just showing how important it is to really get to know yourself, for lack of a better term. Get to know yourself, find happiness, realize that you have the tools at your disposal to live the life that you want. And that can be as crazy and amazing and fantastical as Hook, or it could be a very chill and relaxed life, depending on what you want. You just have to figure out what your happy thought is and fly to it. Let your heart be your guide. Okay. That is the main lesson here. But with that being said, the symbolism of the color green is important, apparently. Healing the heart chakra, stuff like that. Yeah, just look at like whatever draws your eye in that movie, write it down and look up the symbolism of each of those things. And you'll probably be surprised about what your spirit and your subconscious is trying to tell you about something. It could be anything, but specifically with the movie Hook, I feel like it could be very poignant. I think that's the right word, to look at those things, because it might pertain to your healing and your perspective on life. Confirmation burp. Excuse me. But with that being said, I'll close it out by talking about my books a little bit, like I did at the beginning. But basically, I have a few books in the works. One of them is sort of going over this channel. It's using pop culture references to kind of show people how to see the blueprint to themselves. But with that being said, I can't say too much about it. That's pretty much all I can say. My spirit team gets, it doesn't want me to actually say too much about that. It's supposed to be a hush-hush situation. So I can't talk too much about that one. I can't answer any questions unless they approve it. But the other book I can talk about is my Nova Aren series. It's the Ragnarok series, I call it. But it's a 3-book series that I'm very excited to talk about and write, which I haven't had a whole lot of time to write on that just because I'm preparing for something else at the moment, but I will go back to it. 3-part series, dystopian sci-fi biopunk. If you want to know more, let me know. That's all I can really say. I don't want to say too much about that one either, though, but that is about as much as I am willing to say at this moment. I do want to do videos in the future, though, about like different characters and what they look like, backstories, but I can't tell you about what happens to them because that would kind of ruin the point of the book. So I would just say, I would love to talk about it and ask or answer questions and do like Q&A videos, playing some scary games or something on lives. I don't know. But the point is to try to get to that level where we have cultivated a community of people who want to learn how to heal themselves and others and the world at large. Because it all starts on the individual level anyway. Might as well start there, right? Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Keep your minds and your hearts open. Peace.